All right, welcome to Bronx Heroes Comic Con Live. Today, our guest is Athena Finger, the heiress to the Batman Empire.
As my
Athena,
official title is Heiress to the Dark Knight.
heiress to the Dark Knight. Okay, thank you. Good. Take two. How are you today? How's everything going on?
Everything's super chill today.
Super
I've
chill.
done pretty
That's
much
good.
nothing.
It's a rainy, overcast, rainy day here in New York. In Florida, you know, you guys had that space shuttle that didn't launch yesterday, so it's
I
like,
know.
Well, usually when it rains down there, that's usually a day or two later, it's raining here.
right? Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's been raining for the last couple of days here, so today it actually is kind of cloudy.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't rain again. I have
Yeah,
stuff that I need to do outside.
yeah, when I was in southern Florida, it used to, I didn't believe it till I saw it. It could literally rain on one side of your house and be sunny on the other. And
Oh, that's
yeah.
so true. Very
It's
true.
full like pouring and the sun is out. I mean, it's bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Or it could be like a perfect day and then suddenly like the skies open up and like it's like a mini hurricane going on
Yeah,
for
and
like
then
5
like 5
minutes.
minutes later, it's like it never
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no. Tropical.
Tropical weather. Yeah, exactly. So tell us all about your grandfather, Bill Finger.
Well, if you don't know, you've lived under a rock for the last 5 years. Can you believe September will be 5 years since he's gotten his official credit?
Really? That's fantastic. And the
Yeah.
first, what was it? The Batman versus Superman movie was the first.
Yeah, the dawn of justice.
The Dawn of Justice. Did you hear the news that Zack Snyder is actually going to remake his Justice League? I'm actually excited. And they're bringing back Ben Affleck as Batman.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, people made such a big stink about that. I would actually like to see the first Suicide Squad.
That one, yeah. They're going to
Like,
redo that too, yeah.
Cut that they wanted to do, not what we got.
Right. Yeah, you know what it is? It's just that, you know, with these Warner Brothers and their producers, I don't know what it is. They've been doing movies longer than Marvel, but somehow they just can't get it together when it comes to these superhero films.
I don't know. Rick
Yeah,
and I talk about that all the time.
I thought that Ben Affleck was actually underrated as.
Oh, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
So I got it right here. He's actually going to make his own Batman movie now.
Oh, he's back to doing that?
He's back to doing it. It might be for HBO Max, you know, as a separate, with it separate from the Robert Pattinson, since the Robert Pattinson's going to be like, I guess, a year one type of story.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that would be interesting because I mean, he's great at what he does. It's, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought. Yeah, I mean, I thought he looked you know, both his Bruce Wayne and his Batman were the most authentic looking of
I think so.
maybe any actor or whoever played the part. I mean, he had the physicality that you would expect.
And he also played Superman too, which I thought was cool. So he's been Superman and Batman, you know? It's like...
Oh, I didn't know he was Superman. Oh,
yeah, he was Superman in Hollywoodland. He played the TV show... George Reeves.
Right, the one who was murdered.
Which is a good movie.
Yeah.
And actually, Joker is actually in that movie too. The original Hugo Weaving's movie, you know, The Man Who Laughed is in that film too. That's a subject in there.
Which movie is this?
Hollywoodland. It's about the Black Dahlia murders and the suicide of.
I'll have to look at
suicide of it came out a while ago, but I remember seeing that and saying, oh, he'd be a great Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, because he was because I mean, he looked I mean, I think they never figured out whether George Reeves was a suicide or a murder.
Well, it was murder, but the official story is suicide because there was a lot of mob stuff going on. It's like,
plus his career was pretty much, after
well,
the show.
that's what they say, but it's not true. He had a lot of roles coming up. That's the official thing. Is what they said, that he was typecast and all that stuff, but it was not true. He actually had, actually had a new role coming up for a film around that time. So, but the rumor was for years, yeah, he was typecasting. He was depressed and he killed himself. The real story is, he had mafia connections and he needed to. And they don't tell you the thing about the movie. They kind of leave it in the air. They give you like these what ifs, what might have happened. Then they give you like a definitive ending. And you're like, what? It's like what is it? But it was interesting. But I knew a guy. I grew up with this guy when I was working as an assistant teacher who was best friends with the bodyguard of George Reeves. And he was saying it was murder, that the guy was not a depressed person. He had work coming in. And then Tom Siaka, who knows everybody, also had a similar story. And he knew someone else that knew him as well around that time, so it's Hollywood.
God. Too many secrets out of that town.
Too many secrets. I find it interesting, about like your grandfather, how Bob Kane refuted any type of credit for him in all those years in the 60s. He even wrote a letter and put it in print.
I know.
What a scumbag. And published it. He published a letter, Have you ever read the letter?
I believe I've seen parts of it.
Yeah, I think I could. Let me see if I could share screen it over here. It's like it's really disturbing that like the thing that this guy wrote. I'm not going to read the whole letter, it's long, but it was an alter ego in 1965 because apparently your grandfather came out. He got sick of it. He was just like, I'm tired of being the quiet guy. I need to. So he went to New York Comic-Con, not the same New York Comic-Con, but a Comic-Con in New York.
Right.
And he basically had I think it was one of his first interviews publicly where he said
that he was the
creator.
Yeah. So after the article about A Finger in Every Plot came out as that fan letter that went out, that Jerry Beals, I believe it was, who wrote and sent out to all the fans. And then, of course, Bob Kane basically called Bill a liar and that he didn't do these things and that he was the one that really did it and all of that stuff, and that how dare he take this away from him.
Right, he says it's a jerk. I mean, this is what he writes. I just highlighted a few things. It says the myth. Bob Kane is not the sole creator of Batman. I heard this 1,000 times in my lifetime. The Batman was really created by Bill Finger, Jerry Robinson, Carmen Infantino, Jack Schiff, Julie Schwartz, my publisher, etc., and my housekeeper. It's like, it's a jerk. The truth, all hogwash. I, Bob Kane, am the sole creator of Batman. I created Batman in 1939 and it appeared, if memory serves me correctly, in Detective Comics in a 6 or 8 page story, and I signed the first strip, Robert Kane. It's just like, what is wrong with this guy? And then he goes on. He like this. I just read like 2 sentences, and it's like, wow, this guy's a jerk.
I mean, he had to live up to the lie pretty much up until his autobiography came out.
Yeah.
And the only reason why he admitted to anything in that book, as far as Bill's role, was because Tom Andrea was his ghostwriter for that and was like, you need to tell the truth. Like, this isn't reality of what happened here. Right. And so that's where the famous Bill had 50 to 75% creative, influence on the character. So that's what we pull from, is from the biography and not from articles like this or public statements that he's made in various avenues.
And it's like East Coast, West Coast rap battles, like going back and forth. I mean, it's like, he's like, yeah, if I would have skipped down, he says, I challenge Bill to repeat those statements in front of me.
Oh, like, really?
Yeah, he's like, I am sorry that I was absent from the Comic Dumbs convention so that I could have answered them. The truth is Bill Finger is taking credit for much, much more than he deserves, and I refute much of his statements here in print. The fact is that I conceived the Batman figure, the costume entirely by myself, even before I called Bill to help me and to write Batman. I created the title, masthead.
Version, but it's not the one that got published.
Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not the exactly.
So I mean, he's speaking half truths, but I mean,
half truths. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's horrible. Now what's funny is like after the Batman movie, and then Bill Finger is long gone. He's on this thing with. Can you see this video that I have here with Stanley?
Where he's like, oh, you know, I'll steal it if I have to.
That's right, right. So I mean, listen to this. It's just.
That kind of money, you'd be the superhero.
Well, you better believe it. I'll steal it somewhere.
See, he says, I'll steal it somewhere. So
yeah, and that's exactly what he did.
Right. So he admits this. He says, you know, because you know, Superman guys are getting $75,000 a piece. He's only making $5,000. So he's like, I have to come up with a superhero, you know. Yeah. And he says, I'll steal it somewhere, right?
And he did. And then even the drawings that he did for these TV shows.
Oh, yeah. Even those are fake. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else drew them for him, and then he just traced over it.
Exactly. And if you, I mean, I'm sure you saw these videos before where he acts, Stan Lee is teasing, well, let's see you draw. Do you remember how to draw it?
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't draw without my ghost artist. So right here, he's talking about the Joker. Now he's giving credit to Bill here in 1990, whatever this is, 1989.
Okay.
Doing the second.
Yeah, that was the year of the, the Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton movie.
Right. So this is like after that movie, and then they already were in talks with the Danny DeVito one. So now he's giving credit. Now that Jerry Robinson's going after him, so now he's like, oh, it was me and Bill Finger.
Right.
Jerry. So I mean, I just wanted to play that clip real quick.
Jerry Robinson. And Jerry Robinson created the Joker playing card, which I'll let you look at in a moment. It's over here. I created, Bill Finger, my writer, came to me at the beginning with a picture of Conrad Veidt, who is the actor in a Victor Hugo movie called The Man Who Laughs by Victor Hugo. Yeah. And as you can all see, it's the exact replica of the comic I drew way back in 1939, 1940. And that was my creation of the Joker. Jerry Robinson, to his dying day, will say he created, and look, here's my answer to him. Had Jerry come to me first with the Joker playing card, the Joker would have looked like this and not like this. So apparently I was first and he came second.
Well, since this isn't the court of law, I might add one thing, though.
I didn't prove my case, right?
No.
He's like, no, you didn't. So he's like, no. Like,
yeah, but I mean, he stole stuff too. So
they're
the same mold, unfortunately. But I mean, Stan would, saw that he needed to right his ways so that he could have, a better reputation going forward. But Bill didn't create Bob's reputation. He did that for himself as a scumbucket. And I don't like to talk poorly about people, but that's pretty much what he was. I mean, he stole from everyone that he could.
Yeah, I also think it's, I also think it's part of like, we have this thing where we always have to feel that no matter how big the project or the company, that one person did it, when in reality, it's almost always much more collaborative.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to take away from, now I've bashed Bob enough, okay? I'm going to say something positive. Okay. Because really, if he had not gone to Bill with his Bat-Man wearing this red unitard with the little domino mask and the big stuffed wings, if he didn't have that concept to take to my grandfather,
to
manipulate and mold into what we have now,
I'm
not going to take that away from Bob. Because if he didn't have that initial thing, then Bill would have had nothing to change. We wouldn't be here 80 plus years later. Okay, so he did have the initial idea. I'm not going to take that away from him. But he didn't create the Batman that we have today. That was a conversation between him and my grandfather.
Right. And what I love about it is when I read it in this book as a kid and when I was working in a comic book store, it said that they created it in the Bronx in Poe Park, and that blew me away. I was like, wow, the Bronx, Poe Park. And then, even though I grew up in the Bronx, I had never gone to Poe Park. I was like, where's that?
No, everybody goes there to go see Bill Finger Way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you want to tell us about that a little bit, about the Bill Finger Way?
I was really surprised about that, actually. I had no involvement with that. I was informed after the fact. But they wanted to honor Bill and the achievements that he had made. He grew up in the Bronx, went to Bronx schools. He went to Dwight. And so they honored him by naming one of the side streets on Poe Park, Bill Finger Way. So a couple years ago, we went to the street unveiling on a very cold day.
Yeah, it was cold. I remember.
It was really cold that day, but it was really cool. I mean, the mayor came out and one of the local schools came out, and they had them do a piece of artwork about superheroes, and one of the students got up and talked, and Kevin Conroy was there, and it was really cool. And then I actually got to meet my step uncle at that event.
Really?
And he and I got to pull the paper off the sign together and all that stuff. So it was really cool. And Mark Tyler Nobleman was there. He spoke also. So, I mean, it was...
Yeah, it was a really political thing. It was
really cool because, he was the first who was in the industry to receive a street name after him.
Yeah, what's funny is because years ago when I did the Living in Sequence show, when we were doing the Bill Finger, Bob Kane, Jerry Robinson, I think it was after Jerry Robinson just died. We did this whole show with Will Eisner, and I was talking to the Historical Society, the same people that were helping the unveiling. They were like, "No, we're not interested. We don't honor anyone on the Walk of Fame posthumous." I was like, "What are you talking about? You got all these dead actors here. It's like."
Right.
They didn't care about comics, and it wasn't until I think I did that show, and then the New York Times, AM New York, Daily News, all these people started talking about it. And then I met Mark Tyler Nobleman through Robert, and I think I met you through Robert too.
Yes.
When he was doing that, what was that called? The show, was it Fathers of the Dark Knight or something like that?
Fathers of the Dark Knight, which he actually put on at Dwight.
Right, and exactly, at the high school and stuff, and it was at that moment, I started talking to Mark, and I guess Mark just took it on his own and made it happen, which was great. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, he was trying to get some kind of statue or something put into the park, but they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, so. They're you know what it is? There's millions of dollars that flows through the Bronx, and it just goes into the pockets of these. That should be a sculpture park. You should have like a Will Eisner statue, a Batman statue, Edgar Allan Poe. It's like, even Edgar Allan Poe, like all this stuff.
Stan Lee and even stuff there. I mean, they all grew up there, and that's where the industry really. I mean, except for the Superman boys because they came from Cleveland.
Right,
but
they came from Cleveland.
There should be some kind of something
monument. For all these people that were creating there. Even Erwin Hasten, he didn't live in the Bronx per se, but he came from the same neighborhood. He went to the same high school. He stayed with his grandparents over there. Didn't Erwin work with Bill Finger when they were creating Green Lantern? Like he did the covers or something?
No, Erwin and Bill created Wildcat.
Oh, Wildcat. And then Bill Finger was with another artist that did Green Lantern, right?
Right, no doubt.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of these are like huge, characters.
These are important people in our culture now.
Right. And this is American. This is an American art form.
But with your grandfather, he created most of the characters, that were in the Batman universe, besides Batman himself.
Of
no,
course.
It's true. Since he was the writer, he had to, have Batman do something. So instead of fighting gangsters all the time, he had to come up with some interesting characters. And, in that clip, they were talking about the Joker, and the Joker was actually killed in the first storyline, but he had such a positive feedback from that character that they brought him back to life. So, and then like the love interest with Catwoman, and to bring in a different dynamic and a different demographic, and then, the you know, the inner dialogue that we have now in our writing wasn't really accepted at that time. So that's kind of where the Robin character came in. So he had someone to talk to instead of talking to himself and looking like a crazy man.
Well, didn't they sort of want like Robin to be like the equivalent of a Watson to Sherlock Holmes?
Kind of, yeah, because Sherlock Holmes was a big influence at that time, and like Zorro and The Shadow and all these really important
Robin Hood also,
sure, characters of the time had a huge influence on everything that was put together for that.
Right, and they wanted Robin to have a similar backstory to Bruce Wayne in terms of the family tragedy.
Right. Why would they be doing this? You know, and it's not so much revenge, but to, you know, have a sense of justice in their society.
You know, and also I guess to show where their bond came from. You know, and also your grandfather create like the Penguin and
the Penguin
and the Riddler and Catwoman.
All the villains, all the major hierarchy of villains.
The Mad Hatter. He was also involved with
the Clock King for the TV show.
And I'm trying to think of other villains. The Clayface was another one that he did. Some other obscure ones I can't think of off the top of my head, but I mean, he didn't just write for Batman, like we mentioned Wildcat and Green Lantern, but he wrote for Superman. He wrote for World's Finest. He actually did work for Timely for a little while before it was Marvel, and worked with a lot of what their Justice League was, whatever it was called, All Stars or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think
where they team up type stories, and then
because I think he also even came up with like the name Gotham, for Gotham City.
I mean, being the writer, you have to kind of be the one that creates the world that the character's in.
Right.
You can't just have them on a piece of paper doing nothing nowhere. So Bill really had to be the one that molded what the universe was, and you know, why is he doing this, and who are his allies and who aren't, and who's playing both sides and things like that. So, you know, he really was the creative force behind the mythos and what we see and love about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, in any other like field, you would think being the writer, in other words, the primary creator of the story would make you the, considered to be the star. But I guess in the comic book world, it's who's supposed to be like sketching it.
Right, the artist, that one that actually draws it, is usually the one that gets the credit.
Except for the case of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. It's the opposite. It all depends on how good your lawyer is, you know, because Kirby drew everything, but then Stan Lee gets all the credit. Kirby gets credit, but he had to go to court for a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, it's all muddy and stuff. So, excuse me. So in the comic books, do they actually credit Green Lantern as being a Bill Finger character and Wildcat? I'm not sure.
It's the Alan Scott Green Lantern. So
Alan Scott,
the original rendition.
The original.
Of him. I mean, it's no one disputes the fact that he was the co-creator of that one. And
of those, it's just the Batman that did.
I haven't seen Wildcat all that much.
Right.
So
they don't have a regular series from him. He just shows up from miniseries. I think the last one he did was like maybe 7 years ago. Batman and Wildcat teamed up or something.
Right, I think about 2 or 4 issues.
Yeah.
So I actually haven't opened them to see if his name is in them, because I don't, to me it's like a collector's piece. I don't want to mess with it too much. It's comics, okay?
How has this, like, what led you on the path to get your grandfather credit? Like, what was it that sparked you into action?
Well, Mark is the one that actually kind of kicked me in the ass.
Really? That's good.
Well, I mean, after my father passed away just shy of my 16th birthday, so like I didn't really know what to do, and you know, I was told not to pursue it because it was going to take tons of money and tons of time and lots of lawyers, and you know, it probably won't happen.
Right.
you know, they had been fighting. I say they, my father and Bill's second wife, and even my mom, you know, tried to get somewhere with DC to give Bill credit, and was denied every step of the way. But you know, I think with the timing of when I came out to really fight, you know, things had changed in the industry. More people were getting credit that weren't getting credit.
Right.
The Kirby case was settled, which was a big deal. And
Huge.
so I think a lot of those things played a factor in me really, you know, foraging through. And also, you know, I was running out of time. You know,
Right.
you only have so much time that you can claim these things. So the clock was running out. It was either, you know, do it or don't. And if I didn't, I knew that that was going to be something that kind of hung over me pretty much
Right.
the rest of my life.
And had they started making the Batman movies by that time?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
And the 89 movie was, you know, many years before that. My dad passed away in 92, and I didn't really start fighting until 2012. So, you know, there was a big gap, and there was even a 15-year period where I didn't talk about my grandfather and Batman at all, because it was too painful between the injustice of what was done and then having to still deal with, you know, the loss of my dad at such a young age and things like that. There were a lot of factors on why I didn't pursue it earlier.
Right, of course. It's very emotional too. I mean,
even
Kirby, I read that Kirby would say that he couldn't walk into a toy store because he was just like, it would just shatter him if he saw like all these Marvel toys, like Captain America especially, because that was before Marvel.
Right.
It would just break his heart. He'd like get angry. He'd have like fits of, you know, rage, like really upset. So I can imagine just, because he didn't get any money for any of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's so sad. These super creative people who made these companies tons of money were just thrown to the side like a piece of trash, not included with any of the profits of these characters.
Right.
And my poor grandfather, he was being evicted from his apartment when he died because he had no money. I mean, that's sad, and they're making billions of dollars off of just Batman. I mean,
right. And they could have done right by him a long time ago. He probably would have been healthier, lived longer.
Oh yeah.
You know.
You know, and I remember when the '89 Batman movie came out, and you know, they would show Bob Kane. I think he was living in a penthouse, and
I
think it was Los Angeles, and he was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was like almost like a playboy.
Yeah, he was.
You know,
that's what he wanted. He wanted that fame, and that's why he went into it. And that's why he stole it.
Yep,
every chance he got.
Yeah, because I remember, other than Stan Lee later on, he was like the most like high-profile comic book guy I had ever seen.
Yep.
Yeah, Stan Lee is in the same boat.
Yeah, they were best friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they follow a similar. I think in time, I mean, Kirby's family got a settlement and so forth, but I think in time, more people vocally will start to, you know, recognize Kirby, where like everyone's grandmother knows Stan Lee. Eventually, hopefully, everyone's grandmother will know Jack Kirby as well.
I hope so, and I hope the same for my grandfather. I mean,
yeah,
more and more, yes. I mean, having this big case settled and having the documentary out on Hulu and me doing as many of things like this podcast and interviews and things like that, and just going to conventions and sharing Bill's stories, you know, I'm trying to make sure that his name really is solidified with.
Right, and I think the Bill Finger Way, a big credit to Mark for pursuing that and getting it done, because like I said, I spoke to these Bronx politicians years before, and they just were not moved. I think his Hulu show and the book really, you know, gave him star power that and accessibility that, you know, locals from the neighborhood don't have, and it gave him a voice to speak for all of us.
My name is Mark Tyler Nobleman. I am the author of Bill the Boy Wonder, the secret co-creator of Batman, the 2012 biography of writer Bill Finger, and I appear in this year's Batman movie. not Justice League.
What's Mark's story a little bit, just for like our audience? He was the
So,
one who.
Mark Tyler Nobleman is an author. He's been a children's writer for decades. And he decided to take up writing about some of the creators of comic books. His first one was The Boys of Steel, which is about Deagle and Future and the Superman creators.
Yeah, I mean, they at least got credit for, you know, being the originators, but I don't think that they profited.
For a long time.
Yeah.
No, but and then the family had to fight for decades.
Yeah.
To get any kind of, you know, anything from DC for their fathers and grandfathers at this point. So, I mean, another sad story. I mean, they were totally taken advantage of, and they were children. They weren't even really understanding what was happening. So
right, exactly. They're like teenagers signing contracts, and they don't even know the extent of what this means for them. You know, like.
Right. And I mean, also, they didn't expect these characters to last as long as they have.
Exactly.
That's the other thing, you know.
True.
Like, okay, we're creating something now. It's not gonna, you know, it could fizzle out in the next 5 years.
Exactly.
So who really cares? No, it's, you know, 80 some odd years later now, and you know, they're still just as relevant, if not more.
Exactly. Tell us a little bit about the painting you got there and your website.
This is the latest piece that I did. It's a Joker piece, as you can see.
That's fantastic. I love it.
You know, I had sketched it out a while ago and wanted to get it up on canvas. So I did that a couple weeks ago, and I was doing an online convention. So I was painting that.
Nice.
And I do have a website. It's just my name, www.athenafinger.com. You can contact me there if you want commission work or just see some of the artwork that I have done. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and I just started doing Twitch and streaming video games. I'm doing it all. What can I say?
You know, the whole shebang. Do you have TikTok? No. I've been trying to
get Instagram. Okay.
Yeah.
Done like 10 years ago. I was like, you need to be on Instagram. And I'm like, no. And then I did a painting and I brought it to my friend's actors kind of workshop that he runs.
Right.
And so he's like, yeah, bring the Wolverine painting. It's really cool. And you can show it off at the meeting. I'm like, okay. And this one woman, she came up, she's like, you need to have an Instagram. You could sell your artwork on there. And I'm like, all right, I'm sold.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Yeah. I mean, even I haven't explored that, but I was telling myself that too. I'm like, with this whole thing going on, this whole COVID-19 thing, I'm like, oh, I got like, you know, I got to pay taxes and
I know, right?
September, I need like $5,000 for the first part of the quarterly. I was like, where am I going to get that? It's like
right.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, I know, it's tough. It really is. But I mean, I've had some success with selling online. You know, some people contact me and they just don't really seem to understand the concept of what art is really priced at, because they're accustomed to these mass-produced pieces that are cheap.
Right, they're thinking like Artist Alley type of thing or something, like a printer.
I mean, I think I'm reasonable with my prices. But some people are just like, wow, I thought it was going to be like $50. And I'm like, yeah, you're crazy. I mean, we're talking original artwork here. You know, hand painted, takes time, and it's not mass produced.
Exactly. And your prices are very reasonable. You know, it's like, yeah,
I mean, like $50 would be more something if you were making copies of.
Right, exactly.
Right,
exactly. I do sell prints of my artwork for $10.
Right.
Sheet of paper with my image on it. Whatever, you know, painting that you're interested in having. Yeah, that's $10. But the original, no, it's going to be significantly more because it's an original.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly. And it takes time. I mean, even comic book art, you know, when I'm doing a book for someone, like someone reached out to me through Facebook and they're like, well, how much would it cost to do a 24-page comic in full color, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And I was like, well, if we break it down, you know, like hourly and, you know, like per page. It's usually by page.
Right.
But if I'm thinking hours, how many hours does it take me to do this page? If it takes me 4 to 6 hours per page, you're talking about, almost like 2 weeks work. I mean, with the hours, it's almost like it's more than a week,
Exactly.
And you don't want to price it less than, $8 an hour or something like that. You want to price it something that's more realistic. So I told the lady, I said, well, for pencils and ink, I'll give you a cheap price. I'll charge you $100 a page. Industry standard is $300 a page, because it takes time.
Of course.
And I said, and that doesn't include inks, but
Right.
I'm including inks. So she was like, does that include publishing it too? I'm like, are you crazy? I was like, well, I got to publish your work now? It's like, yes, I'm a publisher, but that's not the way it works.
No, it's not.
It's like, hand me a script and, and she thought that $2,000 was, I was like, we're not even talking about coloring it. If it's coloring, right. It's $330 per page, But yeah, you're right. People don't value art,
No, they don't, unless it's somebody that they know, like a Jim Lee or a Tom McFarlane.
Right. Then they'll like sell their soul and,
yeah, exactly.
give them their last cent. It's all about commercial, the commercial aspect.
But you know what? Art is not cheap if you want good art.
Exactly. When we invade countries, the first thing we do is take their art. We have tons of paintings in the bunker of, Hitler and Saddam Hussein and every dictator that we've taken down, and we collect it as a historical footnote,
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that there was like a market for like cartoon cells, for example.
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, like I think that even on Howard Stern show, he had like this guy, Gary, his producer, who got the nickname Baba Booey that they all shout out at events because he used to actually collect like those, like the cells from like those cartoons that he would watch when he was a kid. So that, that's where that name came from, that nickname Baba Booey. So yeah, they were like, a lot of them were, like, so there was like a whole market for, the actual like stuff that was used for like the Hanna-Barbera type.
Right, the actual cells of them. Yeah, there's big money in that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, Disney.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't really matter the artist, it's the image that they're going for.
That's right. So let me ask you a question. Since your grandfather is now getting credit in the films, I mean, all the fans knew that, well, the fans that are my age and older knew that he was.
A lot of fans.
But the younger generation, now that you do like conventions and stuff, like how do you feel the responses versus before that whole thing happened with getting him the credit? Like, how's it transformed your life? I didn't really
start going to conventions until 2014. That was really when I was brought into the convention scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew nothing about them really. I didn't grow up in the comic culture.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to one comic convention in a ball, in one of these hotels, but it was more like like a flea market type thing.
Right.
Like more panels and stuff, and people were there selling not just comics, but all kinds of stuff, kind of like what we see now, but it was more like knickknacks and things like that.
Like an old school convention.
Yeah, like really, like, and I'm
like
like,
a flea market, you said it, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like a flea market kind of vibe, but it was considered a convention, and I was like, okay.
Right.
That was really the first time. I didn't know like about San Diego Comic-Con and like all these other big ones where they actually had people come from the industry and talk about it and share their experiences and do demos or whatever they were doing. Work, meeting the fans, things like that. I had no idea. Like
it's a whole new world to you. Yeah.
I was, when I was approached to come in, Travis Langley asked me if I wanted to kind of go on the circuit for the 75th anniversary.
Right.
And, we had already started our case at that point, slowly, but we had started, and I was like, yeah, I should probably get out there. It's at, to the point where someone needs to help celebrate. I mean, 75 years is a big deal.
Big deal. And then this year's the 80th, right? Or something like that. So that's crazy.
Last year was the 80th.
Wait, last year's 80th. I think this year's Catwoman and Joker are the 80th.
Yes.
And Robin.
Like, you know, in 1940.
Yeah.
In the same issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know some history. I've learned a lot.
There you go. Here, I'll mail this to you. You can read up on it. I'm just kidding.
Right. I mean, how, like growing up, like was your grandfather and his lack of recognition for Batman like something that was brought up a lot in your household growing up, that whole history?
I never met him. He passed away a couple years before I was born. So I don't know. I mean.
Right. But like among the family or?
I mean, my dad would tell me stories, but he wasn't openly like frustrated or sad or mad about it. I mean,
okay,
so more just wanted to make sure that he wasn't forgotten since I was, I mean, my son's after me, but I was the last one in the line, in the bloodline, since I'm an only child from my father's side. So, and he's an only child. So, you know, it really was something that he felt was important, that I knew what his father did and the importance of, you know, his influence on pop culture. And I mean, he's had a huge influence.
Right. It's massive. Yeah, it's global. It's a global, he created this global phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I really saw him upset about the situation was in '89 when the movie came out and Bob Kane went on 60 Minutes and, you know, said all these half-truths and didn't even bring up his father's name and things like that. Like, that really bothered him. And I was old enough to kind of recognize that at that point. You know, I was 13 when that movie came out. So I think he felt it was okay to kind of let his guard down a little bit and really kind of show how he felt about the situation and, you know, the importance of making sure that Bill's name didn't die in the industry. Growing up, I never knew that anybody else knew about Bill. I mean, like I said, I didn't grow up in the genre. I didn't read comics. I didn't go to comic conventions. I wasn't reading fan magazines and things like that. So, you know, I just thought, you know, it was with us and then people who knew him, and that was about it.
Right.
And then, you know, later on finding out throughout the years that people did know about him. And then in 2014, when I came out on the scene, is really where, you know, actually the first time I really got to see how many people knew of him was in 2008 when I went to the DC office for the first time and met Paul Lovitz, and he took me on a tour, and I got to meet almost everybody in the office, and they all were saying how honored they were to meet me and that they, you know, really respected my grandfather. They all know what he did, and they all wish that things were different for the story, you know, for his story, and that he, you know, blah blah blah, got the credit, blah, you know, but nobody was willing to do anything.
Right, and that's a weird thing too, is that they weren't willing to say officially that Bill Finger created Batman, but then at the same time, they did. Like this book is from 1939, the first 50 years, the 50th anniversary. So they do mention that he created it, but they won't put it on the comic book and say that he created it.
Right.
So like in their history books, like even Chip Kidd's history books mention your grandfather, but yet they still won't acknowledge it.
Credit.
The official.
They held on to some contract that
right.
They're not obligated to present, but they held on to that agreement that they had with Bob Kane. Right. And they didn't want to go against it for a lot of different reasons, which I can understand.
Right.
But at the same time, when somebody created a title that is your main title for most of the industry, most of the timeline that you're in the industry, you might want to, really give the proper credit to the proper people.
And he's the one that's keeping DC afloat. I mean, Batman has 15 titles. Superman doesn't have 15 titles.
No.
Lantern doesn't have 15 titles. Flash doesn't have. None of those characters have 15. Batman is floating that company. He is the only thing. When they revamped the New 52 and changed everyone's history, they didn't change Batman's because they knew that people would be upset. So they continued with it. And then they changed it like 3 or 4 years later. Like they gradually changed it. But he was the only character, like the entire world changed, like this whole crisis, whatever thing. They revamp everything, starts from zero, but Batman was the same. They continued it. So
well, my understanding with the Superman title, because remember, Superman is what made DC.
Right.
And DC and the Siegel and Schuster families have been fighting for so long in court that I think they were really restricted with the amount of work that they were able to put out. Even if you notice the big, huge time gap between the Christopher Reeves movies and then the new Superman movies that we got in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a huge gap of time between those films coming out. And that all had to do with the legal issues. Yep. And then I was told that they even changed the backstory for for Superman a little bit so they could get around it a little bit and like all this stuff that around that one particular title because they were afraid of the courts.
Right. They even changed a little bit around the time that you were going at it. They changed the backstory of Batman. They gave him a brother that he didn't know about, which I was like, what is this? Somebody watched Rain Man? And then it's like, you know, and then he's like an owl character.
Well, you know, like if Bruce Wayne had a brother, that'd be another person who might be, you know, really upset about their financial legacy.
Well, yeah, and they even did it in the Gotham TV show as well. They did it in the Gotham TV show, but they said he was like genetically created or something like that. But in the comic books now, he has a brother. Apparently, you know, they altered it. You know, people were not happy with that, so they kind of stopped talking about it. But they did it.
Well, in the Gotham show, he couldn't even put on the bat suit.
I know that kid was so bony. He's a nice kid, but but he had like tons of sweaters and padding underneath.
Yeah, but I'm saying they literally could not make him Batman legally.
Yeah. No, they couldn't legally because it's not a Batman show. It was about Gotham, and mainly Commissioner Gordon was supposed to be the main focus of that.
Right.
And so, and you know, again, they didn't want to open up a can of worms with doing a Batman TV show, and you know, there was always stuff going on behind the curtain.
Yeah, they do like Batgirl shows, Batwoman shows. It's like, you know.
I heard Batwoman is canceled.
Yeah, I heard because of the injury or something, right? She got injured, the actress, and
yeah, they're replacing her. They're replacing the actress with somebody else, but the show will continue.
Apparently she fell during a stunt, injured her back, and she can no longer play. So now they're replacing her. Or she quit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be kind of upset too. You know how they are, like, you know, with because you're in the industry, you can't sue the company. You know, you have to deal with their seediness, because if you sue them, then your career is over.
Yeah.
They did the same thing. You know, I'm gonna age myself a little bit with like the Saturday morning show Shazam in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, like I mean, I remember even as a little kid watching it and going like, wait a minute, like the actor looks completely different from.
Well, the funny thing about Shazam is that was a Charlton's character, and DC sued Shazam because he had whatchamacallit, even before he was a Charlton's character, he was another company, Fawcett Comics, and before Superman, Shazam was the one that first went with films. He was the first superhero to actually have a film and a radio show, and then Superman followed suit. And then they were in court for so long, they basically bankrupt, you know, Fawcett Comics. And then they started publishing, I find out, like around the 70s, they started publishing Shazam, and they didn't even own it, you know, because of the McCarthy era and all that stuff. The guy just gave up. C.C. Beck just gave up, and the company gave up. And then he became a Charlton character for a short time as well. So it's just, DC is just kind of crooked. They are publishing Shazam and making money, and they didn't even own the character. They're like, let's just steal it. It's like, and then they eventually bought it, you know.
So crazy.
Yeah, they're so gangster. They act like a.
Well, I mean, it's gangsters who took the company from the major. So, I mean, that's pretty much, and people are so shocked when I say that, but I'm like, you know, the gangsters in New York during that time, they needed a place to put their money.
Right, exactly. They need to launder it.
Places like we have now that you can hide your money. So they hid it in these avant-garde type companies, and totally strong-armed people who started them and stole them, and then
Right.
did what they wanted.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, it's like The Sopranos. Like
But it's true. People are like, no, that can't be true. And I'm like,
oh,
it's
it's true.
true.
It's true.
They put their money in paper.
Right.
That's where they invested their money. And who needed paper? Well, magazines. They didn't want a legitimate magazine.
Huge industry.
So they took over comic book companies.
I had one creator tell me that Marvel was very deep with the mob, and definitely Diamond was as well. That's why they cornered the market, as and look at them now. I mean, now they're not, ever since they've had the corporate model, since America has become more corporate and less, they locked up all the gangsters, or they're in like a witness protection program. It's like the corporations, the banks became the gangsters, and the government became the gangsters, and now they're following the same model,
Well, except now it's become much more international.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely international. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really something. Oh my goodness. We went from Batman to gangs. And actually Batman fought the gangsters, so we have to all be like Batman, right?
Well, I mean, Erwin Hansen used to work for the mob.
That's right. Oh.
You knew that, right? He was the one that drew all of the pictures of the boxers.
That's right, the Ring magazine. That's correct. Yes.
Well, it's like in that, I think in the first Nolan Batman movie, where, of course, nobody knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but considering he's already a billionaire, you would think, like, who was the big mobster in Batman? Falcone.
Falcone.
Yeah, like, I mean, and he like said, and he sees Bruce Wayne, and he threatens him by saying, "Oh, that butler of yours, and plus the girl you grew up with, I might watch out for them." That assistant DA, and I was like I said, that is a bad thing to threaten Bruce Wayne with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I love in the movies. It's like, even though to be fair, he didn't know who he really was, but it's like, it's like Death Wish. Like, let's keep going after Charles Bronson's family over and over in every movie. You might.
Right. Exactly. What do you think, Athena, about this new Joker rendition where he's a victim and not a gangster? Because originally he was kind of like a mobster type of guy, and now they made him into this victim guy who plays a clown. They made him into Bernard Getz,
like mentally
basically.
ill.
Yeah. What did you think about that movie?
The Joaquin
Phoenix,
yeah.
The Joaquin Phoenix.
I thought it was. I mean, aside from that, they used the Joker as the draw for the character. I think the movie was awesome. I think it, spoke volumes about a lot of different issues, especially with how we deal with the mental health. And people are, again, thrown to the side, not really taken care of, not really treated properly.
Because I think I saw something online that you were involved with another comic book thing, and to some degree, Vision, was it called? It was something to do with like a superhero on the spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so yes, I connected with these people in San Diego last year, and the comic that they put out is all created by kids who have autism.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
It's, they've put out a couple of issues, and they've been trying to bring more awareness with autistic spectrum and how functional and non-functional people fall on that, and really tapping into their creativity. So
because the one who did the Joker was like saying that he was trying to do the kind of movie that, like, say Scorsese could have done in the 70s or 80s, like King of Comedy or Taxi Driver, like one of those character study type pieces, but you can't get made so easily theatrically now, that.
Right. They don't want stuff that's so serious because they're afraid that the audience is going to be scared off.
Right. So the only way that he could sort of make that kind of film was like to make it about a character like the Joker.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so much going on psychologically with that character anyways. It's kind of fitting. But like I said, they use that as the draw. And, when I got finished watching the premiere, a lot of people were like, "Oh, so how was it?" And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it is not a comic book movie. So don't expect to see anything that's related to comics in this. Like, that's not what this is. And, you know, I read a bunch of articles once it came out about people's responses from it. Some people really loved it. Some of the fans were so angry that it wasn't what they got in the comics that they left. Some people couldn't deal with what they were saying in the movie, so they left. Other people didn't like it at all. They thought it was just whatever, and I mean, that's fine. But I think the people who understood what they were trying to portray using this character really understood what they were trying to do with this movie.
Yeah, well, I think it's when you look at, you know, comic books in general and Batman in particular, you know, the early days, I get it was all good versus evil, you know, but the fact that everybody, you know, that the villains aren't just villains for the sake of being villains,
right?
You know, and you know, and portraying them as being more multidimensional than just, oh, I just woke up one day and I decided I'm going to destroy the world, you know, just for the hell of it.
So much more than that.
You know, and even with somebody like Batman himself, you know, the amount of anger that has to, you know, from the trauma of, you know, of something like what he went through.
It's true. And that's, you know, and I've had a lot of fans get in touch with me and say that using the Batman stories to help them deal with their own trauma, and how it really is, you know, a beacon of hope and overcoming something so traumatic and turning something tragic into something more powerful within themselves. So I think that the psychological background within all of the characters really does, you know, resonate with people in general, and whether it's Batman or if it's Two-Face or if it's the Joker, Catwoman, or whatever character it is, because most of them are so dynamic and so complex that there's some aspect of that character that someone's going to connect with.
Well, like, I mean, you can even see how a character like Catwoman through the years evolved from like your typical femme fatale type of, you know, villain into a much more complex, you know, one, because like in the beginning, they said like, like in the beginning, her character was like, you know, the typical, like, she was just like your typical bad girl type of character in the sense that, oh, you know, she's a bad girl, but she could be good if, you know, Batman would just say he loved her. And then she became, you know, as the decades went on, much more independent and, you know, like in the Michelle Pfeiffer role when like some woman is screaming in an alleyway while she's being attacked for Batman, and, you know, Catwoman comes to the rescue instead and she's thanking her, and she was like, saying, that's the problem with you. You're always waiting for some Batman to come save you. You know, like, you know, that was where you could see the...
No, it's true. And, you know, the Catwoman character, she's my favorite because she doesn't really fit into the good or bad role. She plays both sides.
She rides between,
Yeah, she really does. And I think that most people do walk that line. Good and bad. We make bad choices. We do bad things at times. It's just different degrees of bad, but we all do good things too. So, you know,
she's like a black sheep, you know. She's like
well, in some ways, she was like the first. You know, it's become such a popular thing in genre. You know, like from The Sopranos to Breaking Bad. You know, and all those kind of shows recently. But she was like the first true like anti-hero in a lot of ways.
True. No, she was.
You know, I mean, you know, that's how you know, and just watching her evolve from that, because all the male villains in Batman, you know, they're all just, you know, generic crazies in comparison. You know, like a lot of them at times. You know, like it's only recently that, like, for example, I thought that one thing that Gotham, the TV series, did that was great was how they probably had the best development ever of the Penguin character.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty good.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, previously he was just like Burgess Meredith going around with like, you know, waddling around and, you know, like
the comics always had a deeper meaning for them, but they never translated those into film for some reason.
Yeah, you know, and even what Tim Burton did with the Penguin, which was like,
that was just
like, you know, like he and DeVito, like, you know, let's turn this guy and just to, you know, We just had the Joker with Jack Nicholson. How do we try to top that by turning him into a total freak? You know, like a circus freak type of character, when in reality that was never really, you know, the Penguin may have been a bit freakish, but he was never, you know, he was a bit of an outcast, but he was never, you know, like, you know, this ghoulish looking, other than his disabilities and stuff, he was never like physically freakish looking the way Scarecrow was and so forth.
Very true. Very true. Anything else you'd like to promote before we wrap it up?
Well, my new project is I'll be doing this thing that's called pop art. It's like painting with a twist. We'll be doing it online, me and my friend Maria. She's known as Gothic Sushi. She's a pretty well-known cosplayer.
I think I follow her on Instagram or something. That sounds familiar.
Probably. She's awesome. She's a great artist also. She does a lot of tattoo art and pop art too. So she and I have been kicking around this idea, and so we're going to start doing that on June 7th on Twitch, I believe.
Awesome.
On their art channel. And so we're going to see how it goes, and hopefully we'll have one weekly where we do, you know, some quick painting. And I've started streaming on video games, which is weird for me. My son was laughing at me.
Are you playing Batman?
No, I don't have Batman for the PS4. So I am gonna look into downloading that one, I think, or getting it for it.
Or even Amazon, you probably get it cheaper if you get the disc. Like,
no, it's true. I've been stuck on this one game, Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter.
Yeah, it's fun. I used to never play video games because I'm really bad at them. But I got stuck on this one game. I bought it at Christmas.
There's hope. There's hope.
There is.
And
I was asking the guys at the store. I'm like, so can you tell me about this game? I love the cover on it because they had dragons, and I love dragons. And I'm like, so can you tell me about this game? Is it for beginners? And they're like, well. I'm like, okay. So I got hooked on it. I actually finished the storyline. I'm doing it again. I started last night for my first stream on Twitch, so I could start from the beginning and go through the whole thing with it. So that's what I've been doing.
What's your handle? What's your handle that we could follow your video game play?
It's AF Felix 76. So my initials and then Felix and then 76 is my Twitch.
All right, I'm gonna look for this. I'm gonna subscribe.
No.
This is.
And with the art channel, like you're saying that you're just gonna like paint on the live on the channel, or?
Yes, there's an art platform within Twitch where people do all different types of art. So we're gonna use that platform because she's big on Twitch. She's a gamer and she does all of that, and then she does things with body paint. Like I said, she's a cosplayer, so she does a lot of different platforms within Twitch. And so that's what we're gonna do on the 7th. I believe we go live at 6. You can find it through Gothic Sushi is the name, and so that should be a lot of fun.
So you're gonna be like for example, you're gonna be painting like, you know, what she's wearing, or?
No, we came up with an image. We wanted to do something simple because, again, with the painting with a twist, it's nothing super complex. It's something that you can do within, you know, a couple hours. So it's her birthday the day before, so we're going to be doing a donut, strawberry glazed donut, kind of like the Simpsons strawberry glazed donut thing. You know, again, super simple. So if people want to do one, they can do it themselves. And, you know, we're going to each do our own style because we both have different styles, as most artists do, and just have fun with it. And the whole pop part is we're gonna drink champagne during the time. So
that's cool. That's very cool.
It can be like the next generation of joy of painting.
Right.
Yeah. My friend Sarah, she's so funny. She's my age. She's like, I'm telling her about it. She's like, oh, so you're going to do Bob Ross? And I'm like, oh, no, we're going to be drinking. And
like margaritas.
Right? Yeah, we're going to be drinking live. Like Bob Ross.
Well, like, I mean, you'll be seeing happy trees no matter what you're painting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Happy little sprinkles. Or Jimmy's if you're up north.
Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out and hanging with us. Really appreciate it.
Well, this is fun. Anytime you want to have me on, just ask.
All right, I will. I'm going to hold you to that.
You know where I am.
All right, thank you so much for coming in. And give us your website one more time.
It's www.athenafinger.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now Twitch.